I want to do a post about something that I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. And it's something that I also see quite a lot on YouTube. And it's about what direction your life is going in. Because I have been living where I live now for almost 7 years. And I don't feel like I have much to show for it. And that worries me because I have always been very self-motivated. I've always been very driven by my passions, by my interests. I've always, to a certain degree, led a life of purpose and been very focused on where I'm going and what I'm doing. And since I have been here, that has fallen by the wayside. So when I first moved in here, I was running my little clothing design business full time. I had a studio in town. I was doing lots of photo shoots and lots of networking, and it was great and I loved it. And then within months of me moving in here, the owners of the building where I had my studio decided to retire and sold up. And the new people who bought the building were not nice people. And within a couple of months, I had quit the building. I had fallen out with the owners and I had quit the building. I had downsized my business and I had moved it here. I was lucky that when I took on this place, unbeknown to me, the problems that were going to come, it was a 2-bedroom. So I have a spare bedroom that is a reasonable enough size where I can squeeze in the essentials and be able to kind of function. And this studio that I had was the first time I'd ever had a studio, so I was used to having to work on the floor, make makeshift tables to try and do pattern cutting and things like that. So it wasn't a major issue, but it wasn't what I had planned. And so that happened in the October of 2018. And then it was just a case of, because I had less space, I couldn't have clients for fittings, I couldn't meet people, I couldn't do any photo shoots. So my business structurally changed very fast, which was quite a challenge because now I could no longer advertise my products the way I used to because I can't afford to pay for photo shoots. We always did them as collaborative things with a regular set of models and photographers and makeup artists that I work with, and we all did it for portfolio and we were all building our careers, and it worked really well. We had wonderful camaraderie, it was great fun and I loved it. And when that went, it went, and literally everything went because I was the only one that had the facilities to provide studio space for photo shoots. Nobody else did. So that all went. So now I'm reduced to, when I'm making stuff, photographing it up against a wall in my flat. And at first that wasn't working well because I didn't have the same software that I now use, which makes it slightly easier to produce slightly more refined pictures. It's not great. What you really want with clothing is a human inside them, moving around, doing different poses, showing what clothes actually look like. It doesn't work properly on a mannequin, but it's better than nothing. And so I spent the next couple of months kind of recuperating after losing the studio and getting my head together and deciding on this plan because I hadn't had any time to prepare for it. And then in 2019, we were kind of, getting into gear. I used to sell mostly by word of mouth. I didn't really sell online. Suddenly, I needed to sell online. My only outlet at that time was Etsy, so I was massively listing on Etsy and also trying to work out how I could sell other things that didn't require models and photographs in that sense. So I started to broaden out into the handmade jewellery and things like that. And then I started to get into things like the coasters, but that came later. And so there was plenty of drive and enthusiasm there to reshape my business and keep going with it. And 2019 was a hard year. Money wasn't great because suddenly my whole way of working was just completely different. But I barreled through because I knew I was kind of starting from scratch again. It was a bit like starting a new business. You know, you've got to start from scratch and you've got to build it up. And we were getting there. And I made great progress in 2019. And then COVID happened. And in fact, 2020, the 2020-2021 tax year was my best year ever because I suddenly had to do, the buzzword then was pivoting. I suddenly had to decide how I was going to make enough money while everybody was locked up. And in fact, it wasn't too difficult because suddenly people weren't at work, but they were still being paid. So they had spare money and they needed to self-entertain. So lots of people took up things like crafting. And I basically raided my studio and became a haberdashery. And I sold so much stuff. It was great. It was one of my best years. And then as soon as people were allowed to start going out again, everything fell through the floor because everyone wanted to go back to going to the pub, going out to eat, going on holiday, all that sort of thing, all the stuff that they used to do before they discovered how to be a crafter. And some people were like, yeah, this is great, this is the new revolution, people are going to, discover a new way of living. And of course it wasn't. It was a stopgap. People just wanted things to be normal again. And of course, since then, it's been very up and down. We've not really had any more lockdowns. We've had no more pandemic. But of course, the economy, etc., took a massive hit. And we've never recovered. And of course, now we have even more challenges of, not only our economy, but economies worldwide. Everything is going to the wall. Lots of things have changed. In more recent months, I've had to stop selling entirely to Europe because of the GPSR, which means I can no longer sell to anywhere in the European Union. And now we have the problem with the US where it's not for certain, and I know that in the US people are probably more concerned about surviving than they are buying from people in the UK. But it looks likely that there may be some form of tariff imposed on the UK by Trump and his wonderful minions. Or don't know who the minion is. Is it Musk or Trump? I don't know. And so it's all very. It's all coming crashing down. Everything is crashing down. But whilst I was focused on surviving, that was the purpose and that was the drive and that was the important thing. So 2020, the focus was on making what I could in a different world, and that was made slightly easier by the situation the country was in. And then things took a downturn in that 2021, and in 2022 I knew that this was going to be a long haul thing, this economic situation, and I thought, right, I'm living on my own here. I've never lived on my own before. This is my first time I've been able to do this, and I need to make it work. I want to keep this roof over my head. So it was a case of, I want to keep doing my business because that's where I get my joy and my creativity and my freedom. But I need to find other work. So I started doing the side hustles, and that started in 2022. So I was investigating side hustles. I was looking at the interest rates on my savings and how to maximize that, because that as a passive income, interest rates were high then. Interest on savings was great. I was doing quite well on that because I've been very careful with my money, and I had money that I could spare short term for savings accounts. So that was one thing. I got into doing the surveys online. So that was a whole new thing that I had to learn. And I think it was in 2023 that I got into started to do my YouTube channel. So I was learning how to video edit and doing all those things. So I was always focused on learning new skills, but it was taking me away from the direction that I'd always wanted to be, which was just running my business. I don't need to make a huge amount of money at it. I just need to make enough to pay all my bills and give me a little bit extra to invest back in, and I'll be happy. I can say that, I'm self-employed. I have a handmade business. I work from home. I do fashion. I do jewellery. I do homewares, and it's all great. But now, of course, things are getting even worse. So I've had to expand out on the side hustles and the extra work. And in 2023, I started doing the cleaning work because it was quick and easy to get into. I could control the hours I wanted to do, so I didn't end up doing it like full time because I didn't want to go back to doing a full-time job. I had spent years of my life trying to be a freelancer. I was doing costume design, but I was also working full-time in offices. And after I'd done that for 17 years, that's when I'd had enough. And I went to university for 3 years, came out. And while I was at university, I spent that 3 years getting my business started, building up my contacts, building up my portfolio, trying to get good at stuff, understanding how to run a business, how to do my finances, how to file tax returns, all that kind of stuff. So when I came out of university, I was ready to hit the road running. I did, of course, have to then have other jobs because, you still have to have your income. But they weren't full-time, and I wasn't losing myself in those jobs. So the situation we now find ourselves, or I find myself in now, and it's something I've been thinking about really since... It's been preying on my mind more and more, but I suppose since, let's say, the middle of last year, is that I've lost sight of where I want to go. I feel like I've wasted the last 7 years, although when I look back and pick it apart, I can see that a lot of it has been survival mode, and that's what a lot of us are doing. We're just trying to get by until things change. But things aren't going to change for a while. And let's say the last 2 years have been a waste. I am not in a place where I can afford to lose years. I am 51 this year. I don't have that many good years of independence left in me. Because at some point, probably, well, almost certainly in the next 10 years, my life is going to change. I will have responsibilities from my parents which will take me away from everything I know at the moment. It will change, and I'm happy to do that. I'm prepared to do it. It could also be for the long haul. My parents aren't young, but that potentially they could be, one or both of them could still be around in almost 20 years. It's possible. And I might spend most of my time helping with that. If I don't do things now and have an opportunity to get that in and find out what else I could do with my life, I'm going to have lost on that. Because let's say that my parents live another 15 years. I'm going to be 66. And I am then starting to run into a situation of, will my health be good enough for me to be able to do things I want to do? Am I going to be able to sustain a change in life? I know that once my parents have gone, I know that provided Rachel Reeves hasn't taken everything we own, which is always a possibility, and provided that the care system doesn't take everything else, that there might be something left which enables me to not starve to death in my old age and probably die of pneumonia because I can't put the heating on. My parents have tried to set me up so that that is not an issue because I don't have anyone else to rely on. It's just me. My brother is relatively safe. He's married, kids. They've they've bought their house, all that sort of thing. I don't have any of those things. So, and we discussed about care situations and about things like that, and we have come to the agreement we've come to. That'll be my job to make sure that mum and dad are okay, that my mum is protected if my dad goes first. My job will be to look after her in the same way that my dad has done, which is things like managing the home, managing finances, because my mum can't do anything like that at all. At all. She's not of that generation. So I know that I have responsibilities coming depending on how things pan out, but at some point that sort of thing is going to happen. And that'll mean that I cannot live where I live because I'm too far away from them. So everything is going to change. And that is going to thus reduce my opportunities, reduce my life. And I never had big aspirations for my business. I just wanted it to pay me enough to live on. And of course, the last 7 years have ruined a situation that could have been achieved. My concern is that I will end up being stuck here until whatever happens with my parents changes my circumstances. And I don't want that. I'm not living here because I like living here. I'm not living here because I chose to live here. I'm living here because this is the place I could find that would give me rent when I was self-employed and had no proof of income. And boy, did I see worse places than this when I was looking. So in many respects, I feel lucky that I am here, but it's not where I would have chosen. And you just get on with it. I realise that. Lots of people live in places they don't like. You just get on with it. But I don't feel that I now serve any purpose. I don't do anything that gives back anything in my mind that's significant. Yes, I run a YouTube channel, but there are so many of us out there. My business doesn't really contribute a lot. It was supposed to be a sustainable business, and it still is, but people don't care about that. No one's interested in sustainability. They just want cheap stuff. And I don't want to have to rely on the thing that's now become my biggest income, which is the cleaning work. That was supposed to be a stopgap, and I thought maybe a year. Well, I am into year 2 now, well into year 2, and I don't want to take on any more cleaning work because it then takes away the last of my freedom to do the other things that are keeping me sane, like going out on the hikes, doing the car camping trips, being able to do some creativity with my business. If I say, right, I'm just going to do cleaning work because I just need the money, before I know it, that is all I'm going to be doing. And that will be like going back to an office job. And I don't want to do that because the office jobs were just for the money. I had no interest in what the businesses were or what they did. I didn't contribute anything beyond tapping on a keyboard all day and ticking boxes for somebody else. It never made me feel satisfied as a person. Now, I've thought about completely changing pace. I have thought about getting rid of this place. I've thought about how I can completely downsize, get rid of anything I don't need, keep the basics, stick everything in storage, maybe go for a life on the road. But I can't afford to change my vehicle. I've been careful with my money and I've saved, but I don't have enough money to live in a van or some other form of vehicle, and which I would love to do. I would love to do that, but I cannot afford to do it. I do not have the collateral to do that. Even though it would save me a lot of money in the long term because I wouldn't be paying rent or utilities, etc., etc. And I know that I could survive doing that for a bit. I'm savvy enough and frugal enough and DIY minded enough where I could live in a van. I could do it, but I don't have the collateral to do it. So that's not going to happen. I've also thought about completely changing career. What could I retrain at 51 that would be a satisfying way to live the rest of my working life? And that's a big question because I don't know. There is not really anything that inspires me enough that I think would provide me with enough income to keep me secure. The only thing that I'm really interested in, that I think could become a career and an income, is going into regenerative farming and biodiversity. I am really into like crofting and self-sufficiency and rebuilding the biodiversity of this country, rewilding, improving our soil. Regenerative farming, I think, is the way forward if we're going to become more self-sufficient food-wise, but we have to reculture ourselves in terms of how we use and abuse the agricultural system and the earth, and how wasteful we are as a nation with food, or humans generally are wasteful with food. And it would, because supermarkets and retailers are hell-bent on profits and don't care how much is wasted, we have a problem where consumers have become incredibly wasteful, and millions of tons of food gets wasted every year because of supermarkets' greed. They do their 2-for-1 offers and they buy one get one free, and people end up buying more stuff than they can possibly use, and food ends up in the bin. A lot of the food is very poor quality. We import a lot, which means that when we have problems like COVID, we run out of things, and then you get people panic buying and just being incredibly selfish. And I think 2020 was a very good vision of what our country would become if we lost our imports. And you can't run a country on such a fragile system, because it's going to happen. With the problems with the EU and the tariffs there, with the US and the tariffs there, with all the other prospects of problems, as a country, we are an island, and in some respects, we are probably screwed because we have sold off our systems, we've dumbed ourselves down, we don't have enough to survive on. We have too many people in the country who don't contribute. So we have a one-way system. We have a bottleneck of lots of people trying to use too few things, and the systems are too fragile to support us. But I digress. So if I was going to go in and retrain for a new career, I would want to do something in regenerative farming, not as a farmer, but as a professional. So almost like a consultant or something like that, going in and helping to help farmers and whoever else to do things better. And I'm not saying that because, that's the future of agriculture, that's the in thing. I genuinely love the idea of being able to do that. It's something I am really, really interested in. And although I don't talk about it on here, but it's why I like to, it's not much, but I try and grow a few veggies of my own. I have my pots out the front. It's all I can do to provide a little tiny home for bugs and food for birds and a few freebie foods for me. And I get great joy in watching them grow and cultivating them and harvesting them and composting them and seeing all the bugs that live in my composter. And I love all that. I love it so much. And if I was going to completely change my life around and start again, that is what I would do. But I don't know how to do it. I don't think I have any of the right qualifications to do it. I don't know if I'm clever enough to do it, because I'm pretty sure it's going to involve some sort of sciencey maths type things that I was never that good at school. And, I've done GCSEs, AS levels, BTEC, and a degree, but none of it involves maths and science. And I don't have any experience in those fields beyond growing a few things in pots outside my front door. So I don't even know where I would begin with that. I could drop myself in as an apprentice or something like that. I'm not sure my body is up to doing the work of working on a farm, which is where a lot of people into regenerative farming begin, get the experience. I don't think my back would put up with it. I'm at the wrong age end of fitness. My back's not great. I have trapped nerve, like sciatica and things like that. And I just don't think I'd be any good at that side of it. I think I would wear out very fast. So I don't think I'd be much use to anybody in that. But if anyone's got any ideas on that, I was reading a Reddit thread the other day of somebody who was, I think he was 32, and he'd been in tech. I think he was a software developer, but something to do with farming tech or something. And he wanted to do what I wanted to do, but I never found out if he got to do it because it was a very old thread and it got closed. So I know that there are people out there who really want to do that sort of thing and want to make a change. And I would love to do something like that. If I was going to change my life, that is what I think I would do, is to go into regenerative farming, biodiversity, trying to save what remains of the British countryside, what's left of it. But on the assumption that at 51, nearly 51, I am not going to be able to achieve that, what do I do? Where do I go from here? When, like so many people, I am trapped in a financial cycle now of, I don't earn a lot, but I spend less than I earn. So every year I get to put a little bit more money into savings, and I wouldn't really describe myself as a money hoarder, because although I have spare money, so to speak, it's all doing things. So any money that I have in savings is earning interest, and that becomes passive income, and that goes back into the income that I earn every year. So that counts towards that, and it does make a difference. I have 2 retirement funds because I don't know what's going to be left for me if I ever get to retire. I will probably keep working until the day I drop, but I'm still going to need those extra funds, although they'll be small. So I have a stocks and shares ISA and a SIP pension, like a self-employed pension. They don't have huge amounts of money in them because I only started them a year ago, because I never got organised with that, and I was never in jobs at the point where workplace pensions were mandatory. You didn't get them. Unless you self-invested, you didn't get them. Most of my jobs, when I was working in offices, I was still self-employed. I went through agencies. I wasn't employed directly by the companies. So there was very little extra cash to go around once the bills had been paid. So I never got to a situation where I could afford to lose money and lock it away for like 30 years or something. So I have those 2 small funds trickling away. They're not going to produce a lot, but coupled with whatever might be left of the state pension by the time I do retire, and anything that might be left over from my parents' estates, I might just get by. I also have a 6-month emergency fund, because if something happens, if I get sick, if some of my jobs fall down, anything like that, I'd mentally for financial anxiety and financial stress, knowing that there is 6 months of backup that will pay for everything, all my bills, keep a roof over my head, put food on the table, that includes me being able to invest continuously in those retirement funds. That's aside, and I've every year that goes up because the cost of living goes up. So I have to keep readjusting that, how much that 6 months is worth. So I've got to add a bit more to get myself back up to the 6 months again. I also have a car fund, which I'm adding to because my car is 13 this year, not going to last forever. I will not get credit on a new car unless I can pay cash outright. I am not going to get another car because no one will touch me with a barge pole. And I don't really want to have to ask my parents for help, although my dad has said, you know, whatever you've got at the point where you need to buy a car, we'll top it up so you can get the car. And at the moment, I think I've got about half a car fund because there isn't that much savings wise to go around. But I have I could snatch the money from other things and just throw it in to get a car. And it might be that I could get a car on finance if I paid 50% cash or 70% cash. It depends. I don't want a big flash expensive car, but I might get a deal somewhere along the line. And that depends when it happens. If I can get another 5 years out of my little car, I will be happy. I will have got my money's worth out that little motor. It's been fantastic. So I'm still focused on those funds. And aside from that, obviously, the rest of my savings is providing a little bit of passive income, which goes back into keeping a roof over my head and food on the table and the bills paid. So it's not like I can say, right, I'm going to grab 20 grand and let's go and retrain for a new career. Or, you know, I don't think you could even fit out a van for 20 grand. I've heard of people spending £30,000 on vehicle and basic upgrades to get it live-inable. And I do not have that spare money. I absolutely don't have the spare money. So I don't know. I'm at a precipice, and I'll be really interested if you're in a similar situation. Maybe you've got to an age where you've reached a breaking point and you need to make changes. You know that it's a now or never. You want to change your life. The problems with COVID are well and truly over. You've had enough of just hanging in there, and now you need to make sufficient changes. And I know that there are people who will just throw all their cards up in the air, take a risk, and off they go. There was a guy I was following for a bit last year who, you know, got fed up with his life, and he handed back the keys to his rented place. I don't really put his stuff in storage or gave it away, I'm not sure, and started hiking the country. And that's what he now does. But I can't do that for multiple reasons. That is not my dream, is not to just hike around the country in all weathers, sleeping at the side of the road in a tent and scrabbling around for food and having no income. I can't do that. That is not what was on my bucket list of things to do. But, you know, all power to the people who do, because I think that is quite a brave thing, because at some point that ends. I don't know. I really don't know. So I'm kind of at a lost point. I'm just at a point where I'm not quite sure where I am. So I would love to hear your thoughts about this sort of thing. If you've done it, how you did it, what you were going from and to. If you're thinking about doing it, maybe you're in a similar place to me and you're at that precipice of do I, don't I? I'm not afraid to do it. It's just, I always play a little bit cautious. You know, I'm quite methodical about, I like to research things properly. I like to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm not burning all my bridges. I'm quite organised in that respect, as I would always plan things properly. So I will do the same with this. So let me know. And I'm not interested in people who go, oh, well, you know, just who cares, that sort of thing. I want to listen to people who have a genuine thought on this and want to do it in such a way that doesn't sabotage what the future holds. So I don't want to just lob everything at whatever change I make and then somewhere down the line I pay for it because I really am going to die on the Walmart floor, as they say. I expect I will be working until I am too ill or too old to work, but that's why the business is so important to me, because I can do that from home. I can do small things. I can add to existing income. If I have a tiny income from a state pension and from an ISA and from a SIP pension, all drip feeding, and if I can continue to work in my own small way, I might be able to scrape together some kind of semblance of an income when I am older. And I'm talking 70s plus, because by the time I retire, I reckon 70. I mean, I've put down for my SIP pension to start when I'm 70, but I can imagine the pension age being higher than that by the time I retire, which is like 20 years. Who knows? This is the thing. You're planning for the unknown. You're planning for what you can plan for. But it's worth doing it well. And people say, oh, what are you worried about the future? Oh, just enjoy it now. It doesn't work like that. If you enjoy it now, you are going to suffer. If you end up living into your 80s or your 90s and you cannot plan for what age you will live to or in what condition you will be in. I'm pretty fit and healthy now by a lot of people's standards, I think. But my health could deteriorate very suddenly in my 70s, and I'm at the mercy of a system that doesn't care. I don't have a partner. I don't have children. I am, to a certain extent, going to be looking after myself. And that puts me in a very vulnerable situation. And I'm not that stupid. I see it around me, how vulnerable people are when they get older. And I do not want to end up in those situations. So I'm going to stop now because I've been talking for ages on this subject. But I hope that struck a chord with some of you. I'm sure it has, because I've had brief conversations about this before, and I would love to have a deeper discussion with this and maybe revisit the subject as things go on. I'd said that, let's make, everyone does it in New Year's resolutions, but I wanted 2025. Like I said, maybe this will be the last year I will be here and I'll make changes. And here we are, almost in March as of recording this, and I still haven't done a thing. And before I know it, that year's going to go, and that's what you have to watch for, because that time goes really fast. You sit there thinking about things, and before you know it, it's gone. So I'm going to stop rambling. Do post your comments, be nice about it. I would love to have conversations with people who have done this, are doing this, are thinking about doing this, or think it might be something that they will end up doing at some point in their life. Because this is an interesting subject. So thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you if you comment. And I'll speak to you again soon. Have a fantastic week, whatever you're doing. And look after yourselves, because the world at the moment is completely gaga. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.